Blakeley. Not black or white. It's not black or white with Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakeley.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of It's Not Black or White. We are your hosts, Tim Stevenson
and Diane Blakeley.
Okay, so what do we got today?
We're going to talk about something
it says on here, religion pod. Religion pod. Everyone backed out of the room. Look, let's get it.
I know.
Don't talk religion. Well, we're just going to enlighten ourselves and have perspective on a few things. And the only reason that religion is popping up really is because this whole back and forth with our president and the Pope has kind of sparked other conversations, including what's religious, what's not. Do they cross politics and religion, and why people are bantering back and forth about it in general?
Well, the reason why it's a big deal is because Donald Trump does it, and I do think it's very interesting that for the first time we have an American Pope, And I think that was very strategic on their part because they want to, sort of have someone who can understand American politics, understand where possibly the leader of the free world is going. But the leader of the free world doesn't like the Pope because the Pope is talking about how he's doing the work of what Jesus would want him to do, talk about immigration and, the treatment of migrants and people immigrating from other countries. And he also wants to talk about climate policy. And Trump is now saying, the Pope, he's getting into politics. That's wrong. But what he's doing is he's talking about humanity, about how it affects human beings.
But don't politics get into religion?
They do. You're not supposed to talk about either, but here we are.
Isn't it crazy how it's like one way or the other? You're not supposed to talk about politics because you are a religious person, although the politicians will talk about religion, and because they're usually using it as they're piggybacking on religion to prove that we need a society that is back to a Judeo-Christian or whatever that is now.
Well, there's all that big debate about separation of church and state, which I strongly believe that our founding fathers escaped the Church of England. They came here so that you weren't punished by taxation because you weren't practicing the religion that they wanted. And, there's this huge belief in a lot of hardcore Christians that the founding fathers they were not. They were deists. They were not.
Gotcha.
There were some that were Christians, not all.
Okay.
Some were deists. And it bothers me because I think people are trying to use their religion in a way that I think doesn't represent the United States. We're a melting pot. There's tons of different cultures, tons of different religions. And I have always been proud that the United States has had a rather large tent of different types of people and different types of beliefs. But there is this active sort of thing within the administration to try to, put the 10 Commandments in public schools. Remember, the reason why that's not fondly looked at by progressives is because not everybody believes in the 10 Commandments. So if everybody is paying taxes for public schools, right? We support public schools, and that's everybody. That's, Muslim people that live here, people that are from Sri Lanka, people who are Black, people who are Hispanic, people who are Jewish. Everybody who's living here, if they're doing the right thing, following the laws, they're paying their taxes. They're paying their taxes for things like public school. And public schools should have religious entities in it, regardless of what they are.
That sparks an interesting question in my brain. Are we the only country where we're concerned about that in the schools? Like if I'm in a school in the Middle East, do they have their own, a religion or a way they present their moral compass in their schools? And do they take them out or do they not? Does it not exist?
I think it depends on the part of the Middle East that you're talking about, because certain parts don't allow girls to go to school at all. So
still?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's definitely parts
of
crazy. That part of the world that don't want girls. I'm forgetting the young gal who got shot in the face. Oh gosh, it'll come to me later, but she has a book out.
Oh wow.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think I heard something about her name.
Yeah, I can't remember, but her father was letting her go to school. and the terrorists invaded a school bus of girls, and they asked for her specifically, and then they shot her in the face, but she survived. She lives here now, but yeah, it was all because they didn't believe that girls should be getting an education, which is going to dovetail really nicely into this religion
when
thing.
we get there. But before we get off the train a little bit too far, let's go back to the Ten Commandments in school. That's kind of where you left off, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the Ten Commandments because there is a moral code associated with them, but that's the religion that I was raised with. It's not necessarily the religion of somebody who decides that they want to be a Buddhist, right?
Right.
But that same person, so I have friends who are Buddhists, and they're lovely people, and I respect that they have a different way to address their spirituality as a human being.
Gotcha.
Those same people are paying taxes. Those same people's children go to public school. So why would it be okay to force somebody who's paying for something to have their kids exposed to the Ten Commandments when they don't believe in that? It's about our tax dollars, which is why I think separating church from state is such a big thing. It's such a huge thing. And I mean, I don't think that there are people out there that believe in certain things, right? So like I use the analogy like, okay, so if you're gay and say a bunch of people who are in the gay community decide like, oh, we want everybody to follow our particular way of living.
Right.
Imagine the outcry then.
Right.
Imagine that kind of outcry. People are like, no, and I don't want my children learning that. Well, it's the same thing. It's packaged differently, but it's the same kind of thing.
Where does it stop? Because you could almost say that about a lot of things, right?
You could, but I think when you get into religion and religion and politics have, deep roots, right? On politics have deep roots in policy, right? Like we're going to make this policy so we protect A, B, and C. Religion has deep roots, but they're going to protect religious policy, I call it, like ideology, like what are we protecting? What is our moral compass? Because I think politics should have a moral compass too, when they're treating people poorly.
Right.
And religion is supposed to have that. So if you have politics and religion, I do think even though that you separate them, they both are in tandem all the time.
It's weird, but only certain things are separated, right? So if we posting something that has the Ten Commandments is one thing, right? They no longer say the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Or does that still happen?
They don't, because it said under God.
One nation under God. Our money has In God We Trust on it, right?
That happened in the 1950s.
Right.
It didn't say that before.
And it's weird when we implement God in certain things, even in the school. So like if you have a flag there, right? But you have
I don't even know if I've seen flags at schools.
Well, I haven't been in a school on the outside, but I don't know about the inside. When I grew up, we had a flag on the inside of the room. But we also had to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance when I was a kid, so it's changed.
It has changed. But I think the reason it has changed is because a lot of the policies that shape public schools have changed because parents were upset about it. Like there were a lot of court cases, that said, hey, I don't practice your religion, and my child gets up every day and has to practice your religion.
Right.
What if you had to practice mine? So people want it to be fair to them, and I do think there's a weird thing with Donald Trump to try to make it fair for Christians. But the United States is a huge melting pot of different people.
But even Christianity, I mean, my dad used to make this joke. My dad was a deacon. He's like, how do you get rid of a room full of Christians? You talk about God.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because a lot of Christians have different beliefs in the same system, within the same system, sometimes. So you're like, they would just debate things. They're like, well, you guys are all kind of preaching from the same book and the same kind of doctrine, but they still have differences within that.
Is this the whole thing about the Trinity? Are you going there? Are you going there about
the Trinity is another? Well, that
like
also
whether
exists.
or not you think God was that Jesus was the Son of God.
Well, some people will say that Jesus is God, right? And so I understand the concept of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy explain those three things as though they are one. But the word Trinity itself doesn't even exist in the Bible. But if you say, like, I sent my son to deliver a message as the king, then he is the king. But he still reports back to his father, just like Jesus reported back to God, right?
So I have more of a philosophical way of looking at religion, because I think it comes down to like something really, there's a core value about religion that I think gets overlooked. I think it is much harder to be kind 7 days a week than go to church on Sunday. Go to a physical building and pretend that you're that nice guy 7 days a week.
When he was in the club on Saturday.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem if you want to dance it up. But what I have a problem with is when you're not kind to your neighbor, when you're super, super self-interested and selfish, and you don't care. As long as they're not attacking me,
Right.
I'm not Hispanic, they're not running me down. I'm not, black, they're not running me down. Now now everybody's at risk. You can be a white person, you can be a white woman, you can be a white dude.
Yeah, because I think you're right, though. I think the basic moral code, at least in my brain, is the same. Be kind to your neighbor, just be kind in general, right? I mean, things like that. And, don't steal from your neighbor, don't steal from anybody. Things like that, I believe, because I think that creates a better standard of living in general. People cross those lines all the time. But when you're little, and this is what circling back to what you said before, because I was taught that, we did know right from wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing that really bothers me. I feel like people, they don't practice what they teach their children. Like for me, like if I'm going to say or do something, I always think, would this be something that would be acceptable for my child to view, right? And sometimes, I'm less than eloquent if somebody gets under my craw,
we all get there. We're human.
Gets me all worked up about, some of the, what I call atrocities that are happening in today's world, like genocide, right? I don't believe in the war in Iran. I don't believe we should have attacked Lebanon. I don't believe that we should have, as bad as he is, I don't think we should have gotten Maduro out of Venezuela. Like, when did it be okay that we just go snag and kidnap another leader? That's not, it's not how we do things. And then, of course, there's poor Ukraine, which is still, in a war with Russia. But I think wars and guns are about killing people and about killing them, hurting them, and then taking things that don't belong to you, right?
Well, most of it is about gaining power
or
resources, and everybody else is a casualty of it. Typically, people die.
Yeah, it makes me really mad. Yeah. And there's nothing about God in that. So if you're going to tell me that you believe in God and that you care about other people and you practice let's just use the 10 Commandments, since there's some pretty prolific ones, about not coveting someone else's wife, Trump.
Thou shalt not steal.
Thou shalt not steal, Trump. I could go through the whole 10 Commandments and be like, look, you coveted someone else's wife while you were married, It's gross to me. And for people to sideline that and say in one breath that they're religious and then support that to me is an oxymoron that, it's insane. I don't understand why people are doing that. But a lot
of people have, in the history of this world, have hid behind their religion to wage war.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I have a really ugly saying that I say, I think I might have said it to you once or twice. I've told you about it. But when I first met my husband, he was the leader of a Bible study. And I have a lot of respect for that, as long as you guys are actually reading the Bible and actually studying it. If you're just going there to talk about gossip and talk about other people's business, which I found was happening a lot.
Check it out, girls. God, she's hot. I'm just kidding.
Then I don't like it. But the one thing that I said, my husband had said, I'd heard the term, we're not evenly yoked, right?
Right.
Like you're not as religious as I am. Is that really what they're implying? And I was like, what a crock of BS that is.
But that's what the Bible teaches.
I was like,
you see what I'm saying? He didn't just create that line.
Right. But I'm like, we're not evenly yoked. Well, what exactly do you mean by that?
That means we don't align by the same moral guidelines according to the scripture. Right?
Yeah, but that infuriated me because
How dare you say I'm different?
Right? Yeah, well, I felt like it was a comment like you're less than me from more, because I think religion's a lot about your moral compass. I really do.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the whole thing about who wrote it, why they did it, and who they're trying to control. But like I felt like that. But there was another thing, and it's my own saying. It doesn't come from the scripture. But I'd be like,
from the book of Blakeley.
Yeah, I would be like, don't use God as your shit shield. I absolutely hate when people utilize religion, God, whatever, anything like that, as a way to cover up their skeletons, cover up the BS that they're actually doing. Or
just use it as a weapon because you believe you're getting rewarded for doing terrible things. And certain religions are like that. Oh, I'm getting 72 virgins if I blow myself up in the name of my religion.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking, that's bad for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm sure, like, if we look back at 9/11, we could talk about how a lot of those people were thinking that. But I do think that a lot of people hide behind the Bible too. I love it when our president holds the Bible upside down and acts like he's religious, but he doesn't do things that are very religious. A lot of people, there are a lot of people. I'm not a perfect person. Nobody would ever be like, oh, we're going to write she was perfect. But I will tell you this, that I would absolutely not do some of the things that I have seen go on in the last, couple years, where people are just hateful and mean. And then they associate being hateful and mean. And they love to say, winning, we're winning. What are you winning? You're not winning anything. You're like losing. You're losing.
People use that term loosely.
I hate
people
that
just
term.
Say things all day. They don't really know why they say it. Oh, I'm winning. Are you? Are you winning? Are any of us winning?
We're not winning now. Clearly, we're in a bit.
There might be some people who feel like they're winning because they have a lot of money in the bank and they're sitting on a beach right now. But there's still chaos happening all around us, right?
But I just think when we were kids, religion was I went to Catholic school, so I'll be clear about the religion that I'm most familiar with. Although I've been several religions, just so you know. After foster care, adoption, I just adopted the religion that the house that I was living in. So I've been exposed to being a Baptist, to a Lutheran, a Methodist, a Protestant, and a Catholic, and then a Christian. And just so you folks know, Catholics are Christian. I went to a church service where some girl got up and said, she was being indoctrinated into this Christian church. And she's like, I used to be a Catholic. Here I'm sitting in the pew with Frank. And they're all like, ooh. And I'm all,
but I will say this about, because there's minor differences in how they teach or preach between Catholicism and a Christian church, right?
Well, there's a rock concert going on at most Christian churches
that
don't have any Catholic church.
Like my friend got married and he's Catholic. During a wedding ceremony, I'm like, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. There's all these symbolic things that happen with the stuff on the stage, but that doesn't happen in the Christian church.
No, it doesn't. But I will say, they're in the Christian church. They don't like anything that could seem symbolic. I wanted to release butterflies, and the guy that was marrying us was not okay with that.
Right.
And like he thought I was somehow interpreting that the butterflies were the dead mother of my foster dad, and I'm like, no, it's just a symbolic thing. His mother, before she died, she's like, anytime you see butterflies, think of me, which was a beautiful thing, but it caused some ajwa for the person who married us. And
what did they think it was bad?
They thought I was interpreting as reincarnation, like the butterflies were his mom.
They gave it symbolism.
Yeah, it was. To me, it was ridiculous. To him, he thought he was. A bunch of his parishioners were in the audience, and he was generally worked up that they might think that was okay. I'm not against thoughts of that anyway, but that's not what I was doing. I was releasing 250 butterflies in honor of my foster dad who had died.
It'd be like me, somebody getting mad at me because my mom loved monarch butterflies. Yeah. So that if I released butterflies, because for me it was a symbol of things that my mom liked, and not some other random.
It certainly wasn't anything to do with reincarnation. It was everything to do with releasing them as a beautiful tribute to my foster dad.
Right.
But I found that people, religion and the Bible and I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to make people mad, but I think it's used to control people. I think that what version we have now has been articulated and changed, and you notice that more than half our population is women, and there's no women's voice in the Bible.
I
And
did notice there's no books in the Bible. Actually.
yeah, and I talk about it all the time with my best friend, but it just really gets me worked up because I'm like, women didn't just show up. If you're here, you can thank a woman. And you can thank, and people are like, well, what about the dad? We need to thank the dad. Well, yeah, he participated for a few minutes, but that woman, she carried you for 9 months. And let me tell you, it's not an easy feat to carry another person in your body. Talk about alien. It's just like that.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, everybody's like, my God, that's so gross. I'm like, oh, well, I hate to tell you.
It's called birthing a child.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that.
You ever seen a cow birth a calf?
Yeah.
It's not pretty either.
It's not. But it's frustrating, like the King James, they call it the King James Version for a reason. Because King James made it more appealing to what he wanted people to think, and you and I've talked about like different parts of the Bible where there are certain things that are said and they don't actually even mean what people think they mean now.
A lot of things have changed. Connotation has changed. It's so many thousands of years ago. You have to put it in the context of the time, right?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Old Testament. You're telling me that, my good Lord, I wouldn't want to follow that.
I think everyone should go back and read the Old Testament as it is in the Bible now. This is going to sound controversial, but it's true. It reads like a horror story.
It does. It's like terrible.
It reads like a terrible horror story. Now, we all get the context of Genesis, which means the beginning, right? And like all these other things. But there's things in there that you go, that is crazy.
Yeah, like sacrificing your kids or something.
Giving your wife and your children to do as they wish to the people so they didn't pillage your house or pillage you, right? It's just nutty. And it's in there. My sister actually sent me scriptures. I was like, it's crazy. And I was like, okay.
Well, I think the concept that you and I were talking about earlier was kind of interesting because nobody's ever said this to me, but the concept of Adam and Eve, right? Like my first thing was like, they're so white. And then you said, if every person.
Yeah, if every person. Okay. I'm probably going to get so much shit for this. It's going to be great. Okay, because some people believe this and then it's been taken out of context from who knows how many ways. But the people who, when I was growing up, that believed that Adam and Eve were the first two people on the planet, right, which would mean we were all ancestrally related.
Right.
Because if they had to populate the earth and they were the only two people, right? If that's the case, right? Unless we found out, oh, by the way, there's people somewhere else. Or people somewhere else. But that's kind of how they taught us when I was a kid. So we just thought, oh, there's Adam and Eve were the first two people. Never really thinking past that point.
Well, I was raised to think that, but I thought it was interesting. You and I tried to dissect, what happened in the Garden of Eden, and the apple, and then eat, over history. This is where I get into like the Bible's been manipulated and changed to fit the purposes of the things, because over time, both of them had taken a bite of the apple, but over time, it was the female who was villainized. She was the temptress. She was the one that did the wrong thing or the more wrong thing, and I'm like,
is that just a sign of those times where it's crazy to me, but like women were seen as less than? Is that the right word?
No, because that's funny you say that because the Bible, women were actually not. Okay. So like they weren't seen as less than. That was
because there were queens, right? They were
absolutely, and according to the Bible, according to theologians, lots of theologians and people who've researched the Bible and researched scriptures and things like that. There are parts of the Bible that were not included,
right? Like
Mary Magdalene, who up until 1969, like, good Lord of mercy, think how long the Bible was around. It took them until 1969 to decide that she wasn't a hooker. There is a strong belief that she was.
Tell that to certain religions.
Yeah,
But
she
yeah.
came from a very wealthy family. You could not be a preacher. You could not be in that culture at that time in history that Jesus walked the earth. You would have been funded by a very wealthy family.
This is Mary Magdalene they thought was her career?
Yep.
But why?
Because I think it's better for them to demonize women because it takes power from her. It takes power. It takes credibility. So if she's talking and saying stuff, because there's very strong evidence that there were a lot of women that were preaching and they were also baptizing people.
Right.
And I think when you demean a woman, you make it seem like that's why like men, and this, I mean, talk about not coming very far. When Kamala was running, men would be like, she's not qualified. She slept her way to the top. And just take that, just think about that for a second.
That's the double standard we're talking about?
Yeah. Think about, that's how they try to demean her. That's how they try to discredit her, is by making whatever she's done attached to.
Well, that's assuming that a woman had to sleep her way to the top because she wasn't qualified. But they do that with all women, right? It's like not just her.
Right, but they used sexuality. They used her relationship with Willie Brown to demean her.
But that's
and
what
these
I mean.
were Democrat men that didn't talk to me like this. I would get so
It's just
fed up.
men, right?
Well, I think
in the history of this
power.
country, it's just men. It's like saying, hey, we're going to allow you to vote. Who made that choice? The men did, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how it's been like that. That's what I'm saying. It's a man thing. It has been for so long.
It wasn't in Greek mythology. It wasn't in Grecian times.
But even back in the
power.
biblical days, they omitted anything that a woman would say. Women wrote stuff too, right?
Right. It's absolutely aggravating to me because there is an attempt to do that again, to demean women, to make women seem less than, less powerful than. And I don't know, I have this weird idea that I think that part of why there's that attempt is because I'm like, why do they do that to women? What is it? Why when Hillary ran? Oh, I don't like her. I wouldn't drink a beer with her. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think they don't want their mom in charge anymore. And there's something about a powerful woman that reminds you of your mother telling you what to do.
There's other countries that have women leaders.
There are, but for some reason, Western civilization has.
But the funny though is that that's even indoctrinated, even in some women, right? Because I remember, I think it was Jordan Cooper or whatever, he was interviewing this woman, and she's like, "Well, president is a man's job." And he goes, "Why do you say that?" She goes, "Well, a woman can get in there, and she could snap and have her period." And then he went, "Haven't all wars been started by men?"
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
It's true. And also the other thing that's just so ridiculous is, I hate to say this, but most of the women that were like the two women we have that got close to the presidency, I don't think they're having their period anymore. So that's like like I hate to tell you folks, I think menopause.
They're past that perimenopause.
Yeah, and you know what? And I always say menopause exists. Men have hormones too.
Truly.
And maybe perhaps that's how some of the wars get started. Somebody's having a hormone flush.
It says like women who did appear in the can't even say that canonical Bible, including Mary Magdalene, Deborah, Esther, Ruth, Phoebe, and Junia, however you pronounce that.
There were definitely sections that were removed or altered. And let's just talk about what the chapters in the Bible are. Do you see Phoebe in there? Do you see Mary in there? No, you see Luke, John, Matthew. They're all men. And so
my boys. No, just kidding.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself why, when there's more women on this earth than there are men, because there are. Did you know that?
Right.
Why is it that their voice is marginalized? Why are most of the CEOs men? Why are they better at it than women? I personally know that I was paid $20,000 less, even though I was the number one seller for the companies I worked for, and I was paid $20,000 less than my male counterpart. Was he smarter than I was? He clearly wasn't better at his job than I was.
I will say this though: servicemen who go to the army should get paid more money.
What did you say?
The men who go to war should get paid more money.
More money than who?
More money than anybody on the battlefield, unless they're the equivalent of them on the battlefield itself. Now, if a woman is standing beside me with a machine gun, absolutely.
Right.
It just typically doesn't happen. That's all.
Well, so many of our wars are now fought by electronic devices. So,
I mean, we still have boots on the ground, but when we send 5,000 troops right now,
right?
Unless they're like most of the women are in logistics, right? Which is crazy because there are women who could fight on the battlefield. It just typically didn't happen in this country, right?
I don't know how many women do that.
Like Vietnam,
right? Vietnam, no, because we weren't progressive enough then. I don't know if you're having to walk and carry a machine gun and you've practiced and you know what the kickback's going to be and everything. I don't think there's a difference between whether a man can shoot it better than a woman.
No, but I just say typically, and we had this conversation before, there are certain jobs that typically women don't want, right?
Yeah.
Most women don't want to go to war. Not you know what I mean?
I don't know. I think there's a sub-slice.
I'm being
people.
vague, but just the high percentage of men that enlist in the army.
I think it's more than, for sure. It's definitely, I don't know. I've never done the statistics on
We were talking about before, like roofing.
Right? Yeah, like there's not a lot of women in roofing, probably.
Because it's not a job that women typically gravitate towards, that's all.
But that
doesn't mean they're not smart enough to do it, but I'm just saying there are jobs, just like talking about men, like say in sports, difference in biology, right?
Right.
Difference in who can
swim. Do I think a woman could roof as well as a man? I absolutely think
of course
she could.
That's not the argument.
The argument is do more, but so let me push on a little bit of that. So if a woman can do it and she meets the qualifications,
then she should. 100%.
But when we're talking about the Bible,
right?
Clearly, women met the qualification to talk about religion.
Right. But my question wasn't whether or not they were qualified. My question was, why wasn't it happening? And why did the men make the choice to omit them?
Because they wanted control.
Right.
The men.
So how come they have control?
Well, I think women are desperately trying to even that out. And I think technology, AI,
but even back then,
like
I'm just wondering, my brain's just going crazy. So I'm like, how come control was relinquished to one side or the other?
So I think control has to do with money. So, right? So if you had money and Mary Magdalene had money, I think she had some control. I think after she was dead,
so
thousands of years.
Were there other women that had money like that?
Wait, say that again?
Were there other women who had money like that?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah, if you have a very wealthy family, I mean, I'm of the belief that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married.
Right.
And that's because she sat at the right of him. She knew more about Jesus than anyone else. And she also, there is writing of her arguments with the apostles. And nobody argues better than someone's wife.
Right. So, I'm just trying to wrap my head around
how it came to
be. That's what gets me. Right. What gets me is how come that was the way it turned out.
I don't know how come that's the way it turned out, other than men felt threatened.
So like when somebody had a girl and then their family says, I need you to marry him because we need his family's dowry. Did it ever work in reverse?
No. They set it up that way. Sadly. I mean, it's also, there's so many ways to sort of omit women. I mean, just think about ancestry. It's really hard to find me. It would be
is it?
Yeah, it's hard to find me because I've had different names. But the way that you get found in ancestry, especially, years ago, hundreds of years ago, is if you didn't get married and there were no males that could have taken your land. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Because if you had land, if you were the oldest, and you got a 5-year-old brother and you're 20, somehow you ended up with a 5-year-old brother, your 5-year-old brother would get it. And you would disappear because you give your name away. So women's names change. That's why I'm all worked up about trying to do this weird thing with voting, because I basically become invisible.
Right.
If I can't make my birth certificate match what I have as my license and I go to vote, I can't rectify that. I have a passport, so I'm not going to have a problem.
Right.
But there are so many people in our country that are women, specifically.
Right.
And then we'll be able to prove that they're the
So
same
how
person
come-
whose birth certificate doesn't match.
This is just a random question. How come there aren't more upset females?
Because they're asleep at the wheel.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. Like,
Or they're just
how
not
come-
talking about it.
Right.
to
How come
us.
every woman should be upset about that?
Well, they
Right.
don't. They haven't. They haven't realized what's going to happen to them. I mean, all you have to do is watch The Handmaid's Tale, folks.
Right.
You want a horror film? Forget the Bible. Handmaid's Tale is worse for women. It's
Right.
and it's not good for men that support women's ideas either. They
Mm.
all end up dead too. But that's a scary proposition to me. And it's happening with Project 2025. They're like wiping women right out of powerful military positions.
Not black or white. It's not black or white with Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakeley.